What's up, everybody? I want to share my opinion about something that I came across today. Um, I came across an article and it said India lifted 271 million people out of poverty in 10 years, according to a study by the United Nations. India's total population is about 1.2, 1.3 billion people. And so 271 million is like 25% of their people lifted out of poverty in 10 years. And so when you think of poverty, you think of like we all do because this is what we from the American term, the American way of gauging poverty or the Western society way of gauging poverty, which is determined by your income and what kind of education you have. But in this study, they listed 10 indicators of poverty. And the 10 indicators of poverty are nutrition, sanitation, child mortality, drinking water, years of schooling, electricity, school attendance, housing, cooking fuel, and assets. So their criteria to determine their poverty level is much more defined, much more, how do you say, straightforward, much more like broken down, specific. In America, it's just like either you make a decent amount of money, then you're not considered in poverty. If you got this amount of education, then you're not considered in poverty. But in these other countries, which we like to call third world countries, they're getting really specific about pulling their people out of categories as much as they can, as fast as they can. So out of 10 indicators of poverty, America pretty much only has two: education, the amount of education and the amount of money you make. And it's fascinating to me that America's population is about probably about 320, 330 million people. India's population is 1 billion, and for them to live 271 million people out of poverty in 10 years goes to show you that it's possible. And the fact that America has not done that for what, out of 300, about 80 million people in America are in poverty, I would say, conservatively. But I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen with you guys now so you can see what I see and we can go over this together. All right. So I looked up some other reports. Okay. This is the poverty in the US, and this is how they break it down. They said that it's only like 12% uh, people in America in poverty. Let me see. Where did I find that? You see income, earning, earning equality, and they base that on poverty. That's what they use as poverty. How much money you have, because this is capitalistic society. So money is everything here. And so if you got the money, you're not considered in poverty. But that doesn't even mean you're not in poverty. If I make $100,000 a year, but my expenses, my overhead is like fucking 85, $90,000 a year, I can be considered in poverty just with nicer things. All right, so it says that. All right, I'm going to go from top to bottom. 16.3% of women, as opposed to 13.8% of men, are in poverty. Marriage plays a factor in poverty. Say as long as the same line, poverty rates for married couples in 2016 was only 5.1%, but the poverty rate for single parent families with no wife present was 13.1%. So basically, that's single mothers tend to have a higher poverty rate than if they had a partner, a long-term, lifelong partner with them to help with the income, and that makes sense to me. I can see that. And then it says, and for single parent families with no husband present, it was 26.6%. Okay, so married couples are 5.1% of the poverty rate. Single fathers with no wife are 13.1, and single women with no husband are 26.6% likely to be in poverty. And so that goes back to this whole thing about Black culture. I think, I don't know, Beyonce music made it famous. I don't need a man, I can do that by myself type of mentality. And that's absurd. That's absurd. I think everybody deserves a partner. Everybody deserves someone who loved them and cared for them and relieved the normal everyday stresses of life. And when women say that they don't need a man, then it's obvious that you're most likely to end up in poverty for that mentality. It says that 21.2% of children are in poverty, and that kind of goes along the line with the 26.6 of single mothers in poverty. You see how close that ratio is? And seniors in poverty, 9.3% of seniors are in poverty. Here's the poverty by ethnicity. Native Americans are the highest impoverished people, according to this study, in the nation. They live on reservations, and because they live on reservations, they pretty much are autonomous. They are separate from the entire way of America doing things. They have their own police force. They have their own, governmental structure, jails and stuff for the most part. And because of that, and the high alcohol rate in their community, and just pretty much being ostracized from American society, I can imagine how many Native Americans are in poverty. And then you got the Black poverty rate, which is so close to the Native American poverty rate, which is 26.2. And as for African Americans in this country to be so, as we want to believe, ingrained and included in American society, for our poverty rate to be at 25%, 25% of our people, which I promise you, I honestly believe that it's higher. But because America only goes by the standards of income and education, they're not taking it into the factor and into the account, like the other study did, that India did, about the 10 criteria of poverty, such as nutrition. Black people have extremely poor nutrition, not simply because we eat bad, but because of the stores and the items that's sold in our community are substandard and subpar. Sanitation, we have bad sanitation because of the water, with the lead in the water, like in Flint, Michigan. It's laid all over this nation in Black communities in the water, and it's nothing being done about it. Child mortality rates, that can go through, I hear a study saying Black women are more likely to die at childbirth than any other woman. I'm not so sure about that. I think that's just something that these political people are saying, but I don't know not one Black woman who died during childbirth, and I know a lot of them. I haven't even heard stories from people that I know who know people who know people who know people about Black women who died in childbirth. Child mortality also can be anybody under the age of 18 dying through gun violence. That's a big issue that Black people have to get in check. And I contribute that, like most illnesses that face our community, to the system of white supremacy. And sanitation and drinking water goes hand in hand. You can't have sanitation with poor drinking water. Years of schooling are very important because Black people, we tend to have fewer years of schooling. Maybe the Native Americans have a higher rate of dropouts than Black people, but Black people have a higher rate, also high rate of dropouts because of the poor infrastructure in the school, the poor teachers that are brought to the school, the poor environment into the school. My whole thing is that in order for me to work, in order for me to do videos for you guys, in order for me to do anything productive, for me to think clearly, my environment, my house, my desk, my kitchen, my rooms, every room, the bathroom, everything has to be clean. Because if it's not, I don't feel focused. I feel cluttered. So I need to straighten up my environment to make sure that I can focus and do what I need to do, and to get reports out to you guys and share with you guys. You could ask my wife; she'll tell you. Before I do a video, I just make the kids just clean, and I clean too. I do clean too because it helps me focus. I can't focus in a distraction filled environment. My mind has to coincide with my environment. My environment is clear. My environment is well taken care of, and it's focused, and it's, everything is organized and put into order. Then that affects my mind, and that does a lot of people. I just don't think Black people take that into account, because in our neighborhoods, it's a lot of abandoned buildings, rotten buildings, abandoned houses, trash, and a lot of locations, poor food, poor restaurants, terrible quality of food, poverty stores, dollar stores, beauty supply stores. Everything in the Black community contributes to our mentality and our psyche. And so when I believe that when Black people begin to get investment back into our community to where we can have the nicer things, we can have and pay city workers to maintain and put garbage cans at the end of our city streets, the mentality of Black people will change. It may take some time, but I promise you, the environment that you live in influence your mentality when you walk outside that door. Another thing, electricity. A lot of these third world countries, struggle with maintaining a certain level all day, 24/7 electricity. That's one thing many of us, most of us, probably 95% of us in the United States, unless you live in the street, don't have to continue with and deal with if you pay your bill. And if you can't pay your electricity bills, there are programs to get you subsidies and vouchers to be able to maintain electricity, especially when it comes to wintertime. There's a huge program for people who can't afford to pay for their heating in the wintertime. Another criteria, the school attendance, and I already discussed the housing. We have housing in America for people who are below the poverty line, but like I said, the housing goes along with the poor environment. Black people housing, public housing, tend to be in desolate environments or environments not surrounded by job opportunities and surrounded by factories and stuff like that, which pollutes the water and the land and the soil, is an eyesore. And then you have very few stores in that neighborhood. One time I was staying in Oakdale Gardens in Chicago with my auntie in the Oakdale Garden projects. And I stayed there for about a few months. Me and my mother wasn't seeing eye to eye, so I had moved with my aunt, and she stayed in the garden. If you don't know the gardens, if you're not from Chicago, it's pretty much just like any housing project, you know. But what I noticed, because my mother, she was in pretty much the suburbs, and it was, clean, mixed population of people, decent schools. And so when I went to move with my auntie and my cousins, it was the total opposite. I'm familiar with the environment. I can deal with the environment, with the hood, with the gangs, with the shooting. I can deal with that. That's normal. I wasn't born in the suburbs, so I can accommodate. I can adapt, and I don't need much to survive. But it wasn't the guns. Well, not the guns, but the gangs and the fights and the people that bothered me as much. What bothered me when I was staying there is the isolation. When I stayed there, I felt my mind rotting because I was always interested in knowing what was going on in the outside world. And because I didn't have the access to the internet, or I didn't have access to cable television to watch the news, I felt my brain just being slowly sucked out, my mind being sucked out of my head, because I felt so isolated. And also, it was no jobs around that location. It was just the sprawl of public housing, highways around. Across the street was some sort of factory. I'm not sure what factory it was. And I know that was contaminating the water there. It had to be. And it was a grocery store, and it was like a cheeseburger Gara place close by there with the poor food that I was going to. And it just felt so isolated. It's like prison. It was like an outdoor prison, because in jail, when you're in a holding pen or you're in a cell, it causes deprivation, sensory deprivation. Like, you don't know what time it is. You only seeing four walls, and you're locked into a location. There's no windows, no sunlight, no fresh air. And the food quality is terrible, so you're not getting nutrition. It's everything that they can pull you from being a part of the outside world is part of the punishment in prison. And that's the exact same way I felt when I was in Oakdale Gardens for that small amount of time, like a month, staying with my auntie and my cousin. I felt like I was going through psychological and sensory deprivation. And imagine living in that environment with no other alternative, with no one to go back and speak your differences out with, to get back into regular, normal, according to what you're used to, society. all I had to do was go talk to my mom, work it out, and I'll be out of that environment. But a lot of people, like my cousins, my auntie, they didn't have that luxury of going to someone and just working out the differences and getting out of that environment. They were in that environment for as long as they probably could see. And so to live in an environment that's an outdoor prison, it's like a concentration camp. They had grates on the windows, uh, the doors were heavy, bars on the window. It was crazy. It was an outdoor concentration camp, an outdoor prison. And I can see why so many people in those environments don't do well. It's because of the psychological and emotional and spiritual deprivation that separates you from regular, normal, everyday society. You feel like you growing up in a prison, and people in those environments have prison mentalities, even though they may have not went to prison. And so, back to what I'm saying, I just wanted to share that with you all. We was at the housing part, cooking fuel. So basically, gas. Um, there's several programs and vouchers out here people can qualify for if they can't afford gas. Like I said, in winter times and the cook. Assets, that's very important because asset is not physical cash or money. Value is things that you can own, property. That's what asset property. Property within itself, land within itself is a value. But you do need financial wherewithal to be able to cultivate that land to make perpetual money off of it. So having land for the sake of land is not good enough. You need money to cultivate that land and to build upon that land in order to create generational wealth. Now, I believe that if America used these 10 criteria to determine the poverty level in America, it would be much higher than 12.4%, especially in the Black community. They say the Black community is 25.2%, 26.2%. I promise you, a study using education and income to determine the poverty level of the people in America, specifically the Black people in America, and you use those criteria that we just went over, the Black poverty level will probably be up to like 46% of the people in poverty in the Black community. Because you can live in the Oakdale Gardens and have a college degree, and then they may not consider you impoverished. But you live out there, trust me, you feel the poverty draining and the life and the hope being sucked out of you every second that you're there, every second that you're separated from the outside world. You feel just the hope being sucked out of you. And another point I want to get to was the fact that American population was 307 million. India lifted 271 million people out of poverty. It's not even close to that many people that need to be lifted out of poverty in America. But in 10 years, in 50, 60, 70 years, the American government cannot find a way to lift people out of poverty. American government cannot find a way to just do the right thing. That's all we want America to do. Just do the right thing when it comes to Black people. We'll be able to lift ourselves out of poverty. But it's the infiltration into our society, into our culture, and into our affairs that's keeping us in poverty. It's not us. Trust me. Black people are not prone or pleasing of poverty. We have the tools psychologically and physically to get ourselves out of poverty. But when you take the tools away from us to climb ourselves out, then of course we're going to be perpetually in poverty, and then you'll be able to sit up here and say constantly that it's our fault when it's actually your fault through your infiltration into our culture and our society. And sabotage is actually what it is. Sabotage by white supremacist society in America in order to keep Black Americans perpetually at the bottom. And that goes because America is a capitalistic society. Capitalism is based on money, how much money you have. And that's why our poverty rates are based strictly pretty much on money. So capitalistic society is based on level of income, how much assets, how much can you buy, stuff like that. So in a capitalistic society, in order to feed and to fuel and to serve those at the highest ranks of the capitalism pyramid, there always has to be an underclass of people willing to do the job that those rich people aren't being able to do. So there has to be some sort of sabotage that has to take place in order to keep whatever desired group of people at the bottom. And I feel that Black people are that desired underclass people who have been designed and placed to be the foundation that every other race of people that comes to this nation will grow from and build off of and climb over in order to get to where they can live the American dream. That's never been more evident when this whole reparations talk came into play. Uh, it's not about whether you believe Black people deserve reparations. It's not about whether you believe that we should or we should. It's not about white people not feeling like their tax dollars should go to give Black people reparations, or even Black people or Hispanics or Asians or Arab feeling like they tax dollars should go to uh, give Black people reparations. This is a discussion between the Black people, the American descendants of slaves in this nation, and the federal government. Our tax dollars go to give reparations to people around the world who we done nothing to. Tax dollars went to pay for Germany during World War II. Tax dollars went to pay for the Jews who in concentration camps who we saved. Our tax dollars went to the Japanese when we dropped bombs on them when they were at war against us. Our tax dollars went to help the people in the South who waged the Civil War against us, the Confederates. Our tax dollars went to help the Native Americans, rightfully so, for taking their land. Every American tax dollar, our tax dollars go to fight wars that we want to get out of, to build bombs, to go to the moon, to go to Mars. Our tax dollars fund terrible, terrible things. But when it comes to helping Black people raise themselves out of poverty, to make things fair and equal, because of the centuries of not only slavery, but of segregation, Jim Crow, lynching, hanging, terrorism, basically from the white supremacist society, everybody doesn't know how it's going to get done. Everybody doesn't know who's going to get it. Everybody doesn't know how much it's going to cost. Everybody doesn't know anything. Nobody knows anything when it comes to helping Black people. And that is it because they honestly don't know. They know. They just know that Black people have been designated the ground level of this capitalistic society on which every other race will climb over to get to the American dream. That's it. From the foundation of this nation, when they enslaved us, that's been our purpose, that's been our job, is to feed and to fuel this society, and then to feed and to fuel every other racial group that comes to this society to want better. Everything was built off of the foundation and the hard work and blood, sweat, and murder of Black people. You got prisons being run over the separation of Black families because of Black people. So I believe that if India can raise 25% of its 1 point billion people out of poverty in 10 years, it's no question that America, with a much smaller population, with a much smaller poverty rate, could have done that in 5. It's the capitalistic society and it's a race structure that's built in this country that's holding this nation back from actually being the greatest nation on this planet. It's nothing else. It's not that we don't got the right math to solve the issue. It's not that we don't have the right amount of money to solve the issue. We just don't have the will to lift those who are different from us out of poverty because white society hates equality. Equality for Black people mean a disadvantage for white people. If things are equal, white people feel they're being cheated. But they're the first ones to tell Black people to pull themselves up out of bootstrap. You're not working hard enough. You're not staying in school long enough. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. You're not doing that. But when it comes time for everything to be equal, right then and there, it's unfair to white people. It's reverse racism. White people have been born and bred to have an upper leg, and once that upper leg becomes even, that fairness is unfair to white supremacists. That's insane. And that's the big reason why reparations will never get passed, because the people, if a congressperson says, I support reparations, their political career is over. Now, many of these politicians and everything, they want reparations or may be for it. I think politicians will do whatever is politically in their benefit in order to keep their power. I believe a lot of politicians, white, Black, or Hispanic, if it meant that they'll be guaranteed another 4 years or more terms in office, they'll do it. Like sitting up here saying they'd rather have undocumented people from other countries flood into the United States without knowing who they are, their names, their medical history, their background history. They'd rather just have millions of people flood into this country without not knowing who these people are after 9/11. Then they will rather have doing right by the black people of this nation, who they've been wronging since the founding of this nation, before the founding of America. Before America was America, we were being subjugated and murdered and discriminated against. And so they rather take on these issues. They rather, instead of saying, this is what we plan to do for black people in order to fix your poverty rate, because every time you look on the news and during these debates, they say black people suffer from lack of education, black people suffer from poor medical, black people suffer from, discrimination, black people suffer from this, black people suffer from that, black people suffer from this. But then when they say, what are you willing to do to help black people lift themselves, or you assist them in lifting themselves out of this situation, they have no specific policies specifically designed for descendants of slaves in this nation. Nobody. Kamala Harris said there, they asked her, what are you willing to do specifically for black people, knowing all the challenges that they face in this nation? She said, nothing. I'm not just going to do something just for black people. No. But she never goes to the LGBTQ community and say, I can't do these or pass these bills and these laws specifically for you, because that would discriminate against straight people. She don't never do that. No politician ever does it. No politician ever goes to the Jews and say, I can't continuously give your country of Israel billions of dollars a year because they're taken away from our GDP, our gross domestic income, our finances. We have people in America, they don't go to them saying that. They don't go to the Hispanics saying, I can't create these DACA laws and DREAM laws that specifically allows your people to illegally come in this nation, get driver's license, get free medical care, get free college. Things that black people been in this country struggling for centuries, we still haven't got, but they can pass laws like that in 2 years for undocumented people. That's because I told you, and I'm going to continue to tell you, black people have been designed on purpose to be the underclass of this society in which every race of people build off of. And once we realize that, black people, then maybe we'll begin to not necessarily unite. That's not important. Black people uniting is not important, but what we have to do is be on code. We have to be on code. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, a brilliant woman, says, when I say be on code, people say, what does that mean? Being on code as descendants of slaves in this nation, I'm paraphrasing, but I know a few points that I'm correct about. She said, being on code is stop killing one another. Stop snitching on one another for reason of personal gain. Stop arguing with one another. Stop taunting one another. Stop fighting one another. Stop killing from one another. Stop gossiping about one another. Just stop doing those things to one another in order, not so that other races of people can see that we're deserving of their sympathy or their reparations. But if a number of us, we don't need every black person to be with this code, but we need a decent amount of us to be on this code in order for the few to pull the many people out of poverty in our society and in our culture. So I believe that if India can live 25% of its billion plus population of people out of poverty in 10 years, America could have done it centuries ago. But like I said, in a capitalistic society, there always has to be those designated to be at the bottom, and it seems like black people have been designated to be those at the bottom. Till something else comes across my desk, everybody, I'm going to end the video, but if something else comes across my desk, I promise you I'll definitely share it with you all. And I hope you all have a nice day. Remember to stay on code. No backbiting, no gossiping, no fighting, no killing, no stealing, and no snitching on one another for reason of personal gain. You all have a great day out there, and I'll see you next time.